Hello and welcome to Guild Wars 2 Daily. So today is Monday, which means we're going to be doing jumping puzzles in the footage in the background. So there you can see us all running through in the particularly large, awesome jumping puzzle in Metrica Province. Looking back, it's funny to me that we played this in the beta and I was thinking, oh, imagine how many more amazing jumping puzzles like this there are in the game. And there are quite a few, but that still remains up there as one of my favourites. I really do enjoy this one. It's quite long and hopefully the footage will be reasonably interesting. Jumping puzzles I might change way later on down the line just because they are a finite thing and we might end up doing a different type of footage for Mondays. But for now, definitely jumping puzzles, and this is one of the particularly long, more gruesome, difficult ones. So yeah, thanks very much to everyone who came, and if you'd like to be in footage on any of these future episodes, you're more than welcome to join me if you follow me on Twitter, which you'll find a link to in the description. I'll be throwing out each day where I am and when I am for us to go and get this footage, so do feel free to join in. Since it is Monday, I will round us up quickly some of the more interesting patch notes. Obviously, there's a lot that I could go back through for this particular episode because the past couple of weeks I haven't documented, and by God, there are an awful lot of patch notes. It's actually quite nice to see because, you know, you sit around in-game for a little while and you think, oh, ArenaNet aren't doing anything, but then you actually look, like I'm scrolling through right now, it just goes on and on and on. There is a lot that they've been doing. The most recent change was yesterday, I believe, but the update was only posted, the patch notes themselves were only posted today, that being the 8th of October, and they generally include a bit of maintenance on the Mystic Forge, which was still spitting out incorrect items. In particular, they reference here Melandru's Gaze recipe that was still rewarding a Mystic Staff, which was just a massive slap in the face, I assume, to anyone that actually crafted that thing. I hope that those people, I'd like to think that those people that got screwed over by the Mystic Forge because of these incorrect recipes that they've been slowly fixing have had some kind of rollback or some kind of compensation, but I doubt they will have had it, to be honest. Another one was fixed Mystic Forge recipes for platinum and mithril ingot conversion, taking cloth bolts instead of the appropriate ingots. This also fixes the issue with linen and silk bolt conversion recipes, sometimes rewarding ingots. So yeah, just a lot of crazy stuff. I have no idea how they designed the forge in such a way that there were so many really weird little recipes that were just going astray and going wrong. 3 classes really have been affected in some kind of a major way. There have been updates to many of the classes, but 3 big ones, if you ask me. The first one is for the Guardian. I'll quote them directly here. We are moving towards retaliation being more of a counter to taking many hits rather than a general boon to keep up all the time. We also wanted to improve the combo finisher of the Guardian, so we reorganized Guardian Greatsword skills to the following. And they've reordered Whirling Wrath, Leap of Faith, and Symbol of Wrath. So that's going to be kind of annoying for you as a Guardian if you've been playing for a while, because you're now going to have these skills that are on different slots, and that'll take a while to get used to. Hopefully not too long, but they have changed that. The actual update for changing this retaliation, sort of altering how this works as a mechanic, have gone through at least slightly already. Updated Signet of Judgment to apply 3 seconds of retaliation upon activation with or without traits. So that's a curious direction that they're going in. I think probably a good one. Retaliation's had its fair share of problems already. It was specifically very powerful against siege weapons in World vs. World. And I do like the idea of it being a boon that's more, I have to react to this situation accordingly, rather than I'm just going to have this on me all the time and just get a little bit of extra splash damage out of it. So hopefully they can amp up its effectiveness, but make it more limited in its use. And that is, of course, going to affect more than just Guardians. Other classes do have access to retaliation, so I'll be curious to see how they handle all of those sorts of things as we go forward. But yeah, so that's a big change really there. The Mesmers have had their Phantasms, all of their recharges on Phantasms have been increased. Now, if you sat there as a Mesmer, you're probably going to be a bit upset about that, but I would say that's probably a good change because particularly if you look at SPVP, there was never much incentive to actually fight the Phantasms themselves. You always just wanted to kill the Mesmer because you knew if you killed the Mesmer, it would despawn all the Phantasms anyway. And the recharge was so low, they would just summon another one pretty quickly, and it would just be loads of wasted effort killing them. Now, with slightly longer recharges, it's almost the same as the retaliation thing. It's more, you have to react to a situation, be a bit more clever about using these skills. They're just as powerful as they ever were, you just have to be smarter when using them. So that's kind of my favourite way of nerfing something, by the way. I prefer it when they increase recharge. Obviously, there is a threshold where it's not going to be useful and you have to change the skill itself. But I think generally, if something's out of line, increasing the recharge is a pretty good way of sorting that out. For the Thieves, however, Of course, they don't have recharges, and their skill Pistol Whip has been out of line for a while now. There haven't been many builds, as far as I can see, that thieves can really take advantage of. Pistol Whip spamming has been one of them, and that has now finally had a nerf, which, I'm sure if you're a thief, you'll probably be quite upset about this. But it's been nerfed, not in a serious way, but damage has been reduced by 15% on it, which isn't as bad as it could have been. ArenaNet at least have been quite moderate with a lot of these changes, so yay for that. I guess the idea here is obviously that people should be encouraged to diversify and see what else is in the thieves' repertoire of abilities. Hopefully there'll be something else to pick up the slack and people will have a bit more fun on thieves instead of just going all eggs into this one basket all the time. So that's changed there. They did have a bit of a buff on the side though. Basilisk Venoms has had its stun duration increased to 1.5 seconds. So yay for that, but now stun breakers work on it too, so it's not much of a buff. It's just been brought more into line with other skills. Aside from profession balance, there have been a few kind of cool updates. First of all, there's been an undocumented update by ArenaNet themselves. Skill activation time actually is now written on the tooltip, so yay for that. It was kind of annoying because a lot of the times you might have a channel skill here that channels for 5 seconds or something. You never have any real way of knowing that just from looking at the numbers detailed across the top. I don't think it's been a massive problem for Guild Wars 2 because you just kind of learn how long your skills take to cast, and there aren't many that break convention, and most of them do all cast within the same amount of time frame and you can move while using them. But now that's detailed there on tooltips too. It's more information. They're going for that policy of we just want to make all the information available to players and as easy and be nice and transparent about it as possible. So they've just drawn that into line. A couple of other crazy things too. There was an exploit you could do in World vs. World apparently, where if you disconnected while holding the Orb of Power, it would spawn another, it would like despawn the Orb of Power off of World vs. World. As far as I can see, this is how this worked. And then you could go to the Altar of Power again and grab another one and actually duplicate orbs, so you could have multiple orbs out. Now, whether that actually gave you the extra effects, as in your server could have 4 orbs of power under control and you'd actually get more bonuses from that, I don't know. I doubt that was happening, but you could duplicate the orbs if you wanted, and I suppose that has some application somewhere down the line, like a fail-safe transporting 2 orbs to the keep at the same time or something. That's been fixed now, so and that's an interesting exploit as well, because someone had to get an orb of power at some point and then disconnect from the game to find out that they could actually exploit it, and no one would want to disconnect if they're the one holding the orb after you've just fought so hard to get it. So there's that. Apparently there was a maximum limit on karma, which colour me surprised. I had no idea there was. I had no idea that people were even hitting the cap either, but there was, and apparently enough people were hitting it for ArenaNet to think that they should raise it. So the maximum karma limit has been raised, and also I think everyone will be reasonably happy to hear that the anti-exploiting system, as they call it, has been relaxed somewhat in their terms there. So this was the thing that was giving you diminishing returns, and I think was supposed to encourage people to go to other maps and explore more of the in-game world so that you didn't feel like you had to be grinding in one area constantly. But it seems people like to grind in one area constantly because this mechanic was introduced to disincentivize people from doing that, and all really I heard was people complaining that this was here. So, and that's fair enough. They seem to have relaxed it, so I guess a lot of people will be happy about that too. But yeah, those are the major patches that really stood out to me. There have been many other things, as you can guess. There'll be a link in the description below to the wiki page which documents them. We'll be back next week with the best of other things that they've added to the game. Hopefully, once all the live team stuff has sorted itself out a bit more, we'll have some more interesting things to talk about as far as new content goes, particularly with Halloween creeping closer. So I guess I'll see you for patches again next week, guys. But for now, we will do questions and answers, because today is Monday, and at the end of Mondays, we'll do questions and answers segments. So I've picked out a few from you guys. Let's just get cracking on it, proper Guild Wars 2 daily style. Oh, one thing I did want to mention actually, in the last daily, we talked about the prospect of a 6th Elder Dragon and discussed these ideas to do with the Infinity Coil Reactor, and they clearly have dragon rooms, and one of the rooms is all naturey. Well, one thing that I'd read that turns out, I think, to not be true in the end, is the skill challenge golem. When you beat him and he gives you that binary, apparently that doesn't actually say a pale tree, it says something completely different. So if that does turn out to be the case, then unfortunately that doesn't tie into, I guess, what we were talking about before, and I should probably let you guys know. But still, a lot of that other speculation is still valid, and there is still the question of these guys are clearly studying the Elder Dragons. Why have they got a room that's naturey? Which no one's really come up to a rebuttal for, as far as the theory of there being a link to the Pale Tree or whatever. And just to continue on that too, I don't actually believe the Pale Tree is an Elder Dragon. I think if it ever turns out to be something like that, it would probably be a minion of an Elder Dragon somewhere further on, which would explain why we have this other Pale Tree and certain other discrepancies. Obviously, there's no way to prove it right now for one way or the other, so we'll just have to sit tight and see what ArenaNet have got planned at least. In any case, on to the questions. The first one's from Master of No One, who said, in February, there were tons of rumours spreading about on ArenaNet confirming that Guild Wars 2 will be coming to console. As a console, you actually wrote as a console there, as a console user, I guess, I was very happy for this. However, nothing has ever been mentioned of it since. Do you think Guild Wars 2 will come to the console? And if so, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I think if Guild Wars 2 did come to the console, I can't see how it would be a bad thing. I really can't. There are some particularly prude or annoying up themselves people, I think, out there that would say, oh, it's gonna ruin the community, I don't want any console players in Guild Wars 2, and that's assuming even straight away that if it did go to consoles, we'd be sharing servers with people on the consoles. Judging by how full all of the servers are right now, there's a good chance they wouldn't do that, but even if they did, I think that's a totally inane attitude, and I can't see at all how introducing the game to consoles would negatively impact us on the PC, unless, in order to bring it to consoles, ArenaNet had to make substantial changes to the way the game works to make it more simple so it can run on consoles, and then those changes somehow apply to us too, which I just can't see happening. Now, to your question, you say there were tons of rumours that confirmed Guild Wars 2 would become... Well, no, you can't confirm something with rumours. It was never confirmed that Guild Wars 2 was coming to console. Let's just make that clear straight away. This flared up a fair few times through the game's development. At least 3 times this flared up. And it was always from a simple result of somebody asking, what about Guild Wars 2 on console, in some kind of interview, and the devs would simply say, we're not against it, and we will look into it, but we're not promising anything, and we're trying to deliver a strong MMO experience on the PC, and it didn't ever go any further than that. So all we really know is that ArenaNet aren't against it, and they probably have at some point put a small team onto the task of looking at the viability of Guild Wars 2 on consoles. And we don't know what that small team came back with, but it's probably likely they said, yes, it could in theory work, but not right now, we want to focus on actually releasing the game. We could see in 2 to 3 years that it comes to console, but never assume that it will just because ArenaNet aren't against it. I'm sure they're not against a lot of things, but whether that's right for the development of the game or whether it's going to move it in the right place and the resources are best spent doing that is much more difficult to say. You can look for a very good example of the team that was supposed to be doing an app for mobiles. This was something that we heard a long time ago about how it was even going to be ready for the launch of Guild Wars 2. This app was in development ages ago, and they even had interviews about it ages ago, but it's fallen to the roadside, it seems, for now, because they've got other things that they need to be focusing on, and that's perfectly fine. If they've had that happen to them, then I'm sure that any kind of team that was looking at the viability of Guild Wars 2 on console will have met the same fate. Now, for me personally, if I was on this team, for example, and I was looking at would Guild Wars 2 feasibly work on consoles, what is the chance here, how well could it work? Well, I think a lot of people will point to the game and say, look, it's got a limited skill bar system. You don't need a million different macros and hotkeys to be able to play this game. Of course it's going to work well on the console. And that is true to an extent, but it is a 10 skill bar system, and it is a game that has at least some reliance or some emphasis on jumping, and in particular dodging. So now we're looking at 12 buttons already. Then you look at profession mechanics. Let's say the Elementalist needs 4 buttons. Let's go worst case scenario. The Elementalist is going to need another 4 buttons. If you're not an Elementalist or an Engineer, you're going to be wanting to weapon swap, so you're going to have another weapon swap ability that needs to be on there. There's an awful lot of keys. It ramps up very quickly, and that's for just when we're looking at combat scenarios. So even though it is a limited skill bar system, the game is still quite intensive on the amount of keys you have to press, and more importantly, how frequently you have to press those keys. There are a lot of MMOs out there that have tons of buttons and tons of skills to use, but you pop them and it's like a 10 to 20 minute buff that you can completely forget about. Guild Wars 2 isn't the same as that. All of these things you're going to want an easy access quite often, so I don't think as easy as you might expect. It's funny because no one ever really raised this topic when it came to Guild Wars 1, which was far easier. Didn't have jumping, didn't have dodging, and only had 8 skills to work with. In fact, one of the main things I did a long time ago, one of the first videos that was ever on this channel, was me showing off my setup for Guild Wars 1 on an Xbox 360 PC controller, and it worked really well. Guild Wars 2 doesn't quite translate so easily. I think it could be possible, certainly. You would definitely need some kind of modifier button, so while you hold it down, it changes the functionality of other keys, which already is quite complicated and something a lot of developers try to avoid often on consoles. So that straight away, I think, would be a nail in the coffin for Guild Wars 2 on consoles. And beyond Combat 2, you have to look at things. What's the main essence? What's the main reason why people are playing MMOs? To be in an environment around many other players. How are we interfacing with those players if we're on a console? It's well suited to PC because you've got a keyboard there. It's very easy to type and communicate. But what about on a console? It suddenly gets a little bit more difficult. You can say, oh, well, voice over IP, but then is there now going to be a requirement for people to use the headsets and there's no other way to talk outside of that? Then menus as well get very fiddly. If they did do it, it wouldn't obviously be mouse driven. They'd probably have to rework the way all of the menus work. And the bare bones is sort of there. You can already see that there's selectable buttons in the top left. All they'd have to do is expand the functionality of those. And in general, people would have what they want. But just, I'm not convinced. I think it would take an awful lot of work. And if that work involved, as I say, compromising how the PC version ran, then certainly it wouldn't happen. I think the closest we would get is a console version of Guild Wars 2 that was fundamentally different in some way to make it work on consoles. And then there's the question of, is this a subpar experience to the version that's on PC? And if the question comes out yes, because say it's been dumbed down or it's been made too simple, then it's not going to sell very well. MMOs, I feel like, just generally struggle on console, and these are some of the big reasons why. So it could happen. As I say, ArenaNet, they're not closed-minded. They obviously have looked into it, and they haven't told us what they found. They might look into it again in a year or so. They might have even decided they do want to develop it, and they're quietly squirreling away on it, just like they were squirreling away on a Mac client. We'll have to see, but that's my general thoughts on it at this point. I'm not against it, I just don't see how they'd manage to make it work. Disciples of the Grid asked, you never mentioned anything about that god-awful trailer ArenaNet released, because it was a pretty big thing. Are you scared of negative publicity or something? No, I'm not. It's just, it released just about when Daily stopped, really. So I had plenty to say about it. I still do have plenty to say about it. I think it was a damn shame. I really, really do. And I felt a bit foolish thinking and talking so much about all the screenshots they were releasing and getting all excited about the prospect of some live action thing that was going to be super cool that ended up not being so. In case you've been living under a rock, I should explain to people what this was. This was the official trailer, for the release trailer for Guild Wars 2, and it featured live action stuff. The problem was it was very artsy, it was very weird, it didn't talk at all or show off at all anything about the gameplay until the last few seconds, at which point it spoiled the look of the final boss. It spoiled Zhaitan and didn't tell anyone that could have been new to Guild Wars anything about the game whatsoever. It gave us like 5 seconds worth of gameplay to judge whether we were going to buy this thing. It was just all out, just terribly, terribly done. And I feel bad saying it, but I find it hard to defend them. This was such a wide swing, such a terrible miss from ArenaNet. I have seen some people trying to look at deeper meanings in it once it came out. Like there's this whole idea that all the people are kind of sat there in cast plaster and slowly they're breaking out, looking at the screens and stuff. And there's this subtext, I guess, of how people are stuck in an MMO rut and they need something different and they need to break out, and now they've got Guild Wars 2. But it just feels pointless to even go that deep with it, because this is supposed to be about the game, not some odd social commentary on the state of MMOs and Guild Wars 2 sitting on a pedestal, which is kind of how it comes across if you look at it in that light. I've seen other people speculating about more lore-sided stuff to do with it, saying how the sort of the more fiery areas, all this is representing Primordus, and here's the icy areas, this is to do with Jormag, it's showing us all of the dragons. But again, I find it hard to rally behind that. I just thought that the trailer was a big disappointment, and mainly to me the reason for that was the prospect of live action is an exciting one, and a lot of us were excited. ArenaNet were throwing out all these tweets, all these little quotes and so forth, and it was exciting because we thought it was going to be in-universe live action. That's what's exciting. If we'd seen actual characters and we'd seen what was supposed to be a representation of Tyria, the actual game world, but in real life. That would have been fantastic, but all they really did was then show us a series of entirely disconnected scenes that were very much real life, that had nothing to do with Tyria or anything to do with the game that we were really excited about. And that was a big problem from my perspective on why the trailer didn't really resonate with me. But also you can see that for people that don't know about Guild Wars 2, or as a piece that is literally supposed to market the game to an audience, this failed there too. It didn't show anyone anything tangible about the innovations or changes in Guild Wars 2, how it was supposed to work, what ArenaNet were trying to achieve. It just came out with this sort of half-shrouded, semi-pretentious message that then showed a tiny bit of gameplay that sure might have interested people a small amount, but not enough. And for the people who were already in-game and were trying to save themselves for Zhaitan, that felt like a massive middle finger. Here, get nothing new to enjoy the entire way through the trailer, and now we're just going to suddenly ruin the end for you to try and redeem it. That's what it seemed like to me. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't a fan of the trailer, not at all, and I think maybe it gets a worse rap than perhaps it deserves. But I feel like Guild Wars 2 was a game that really needed a good release trailer, and it didn't get it. And that's the reason why I think a lot of us are upset. It's not people hating on the game and trying to say Guild Wars 2 stuck. So I think this is a big thing that everyone needs to remember. A lot of the times when you see people complaining, it's because really they're just very big fans of the game and they just want to see it succeed. And now they're disappointed with something. It's not that they hate the game or they're just out to get it. It's just, if you look at something like that trailer, you can see it didn't do very well. It wasn't really what we wanted. Also, I find it funny that very shortly after that trailer came out and flopped, dare I say, they put out this What is Guild Wars 2 video, which seemed to do everything the release trailer was supposed to, but after the release trailer was out and without the marketing that the release trailer had, so ultimately didn't quite do what it was supposed to either. The What is Guild Wars 2 thing, if that had come out as the release trailer, would have been far better for actually selling the game and marketing the game, but in the end it didn't, which is a shame. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the release trailer. I can't wait to see what they do for the first expansion release trailer. That should be very fun to see. Maybe they should go back to the CGI. For as much as the CGI is a waste of money and time, at least we get something vaguely cool out of it by the end. A very quick question just to wrap up the episode. Binner DJ says, have you considered doing community events on Pecan Square as well as Emery Bay? For those of you who don't know, Pecan Square is where my Let's Play characters are parked at the moment. And yes, I'm very much planning on doing that. When they level up a little bit more, when I'm a bit further in, that will be a nice way to get you guys in Europe more involved as well. I know some people have a lot of problems with the lag if they're connecting to the US servers. So yeah, that's on the plans. And I'll be letting you know, as I say, on Twitter where I'm doing these things and when. Anyway, there you go, guys. That was Guild Wars 2 Daily for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.